So this was week part two of in the Infinity Inc. saga. Remember last week it took a break and brought Green Lantern's daughter back into the fray. She wanted to find her brother, and he has the power of darkness, just like the Shed. And when he kind of like exploded into shadows, Pat and the Shed kind of tried to protect Courtney and Jenny from the blast, and it ended up sending the two of them into the Shadowlands. So this was very much a tale of two halves. But it was very much done to wrap up the Infinity Inc. saga. And so we know Mr. Bones is running the Helix Academy. And we also thought Mr. Bones was the person watching everyone in Blue Valley on the cameras, because every time you seen the cameras, there was a gloved hand, what looked like the cuff of a blazer or a suit jacket, and they were doing a jigsaw with a skull on it. So everyone's like, clearly it's Mr. Bones. No, this week we found out that it actually wasn't Mr. Bones watching them. Mr. Bones is exactly what he says on the tin. He is running the Helix Academy, and the only thing remotely shady about him is that the Helix Academy takes in youths with superpowers who have to be isolated from the rest of the world, but he does look after them, he does protect them, he does love them. But he said to Courtney, the difference with you and your friends is you can put down the staff, you can take off the mask, you can take off the Green Lantern ring. The problem with us and Green Lantern's daughter's brother, I'm going to call him Todd going forward, Todd, is that he is his power. He doesn't possess his power. He can't turn it off. He is his power. Just like Mr. Bones is a walking skeleton, his skin is translucent, so you can see the skull through his face. He also has a cyanide touch, which means if he takes off his gloves and touches a plant, it dies. He touches anything, it dies. So there's no getting away from their power. So basically, Mr. Bones was trying to say that Todd should stay with them, because they said Green Lantern's daughter might accidentally burn down a building with her ring, but Todd could literally destroy the world, so he has to stay with us so we can suppress his power. And then Courtney talked him round and said, people should not be hiding from the world for being different. They deserve to be part of the world, and you're trying to keep him away from his sister, when I think the love his sister has for him is the very thing that could curb that power. Just like Courtney's staff brings out the best in her, the Green Lantern ring could bring out the best in her brother. And they did that, and they managed to make it work, and Jenny and her brother reunited after all this time, and the shadows stopped. Meanwhile, over on the other dimension, Pat and the Shed were trying to break out, and the Shed thought that because the Shadowlands make sure you see the worst parts of yourself or your worst fears. So Pat was seeing his father telling him that he was always a disappointment. He was seeing his son Mike telling him that because you brought Courtney in, you've loved Barbara and Courtney, I feel left out. I feel as left out as you did as a child. So Pat was seeing the worst about himself, but also what the Shed didn't expect was that he would see the worst about himself as well, which is basically in the 1800s, his sister died and he wasn't there because he tried to remove all of the connections from his life because he thought connections made people weak. So he had to deal with that and cope with that. So the Pat and the Shed kind of ended up bonding over their weaknesses, and they helped each other survive in the Shadowlands. But the good news is that when Jenny and her brother Todd worked out their differences and came back together, the darkness that was in Jenny's ring, Green Lantern ring, she gave it back to Todd, and that made him whole again. And that unwound the awkwardness. Remember last week I said the Shed and Green Lantern's daughter's ring, they were interwoven, and that was making neither of their powers were working right. Because she did that, the Shed got his power back fully. They were free from the Shadowlands, and the Green Lantern's light and the Shed's darkness were no longer interwoven. But right as the episode was about to end, Pat was like, Shed, you want to redeem yourself from all your darkness, but that's not just not doing bad things. You also need to do some good as well. So he convinced Todd Obsidian that he could teach him how to use the power of the shadows. So they've gone off and done their own thing. Jenny's decided to join them. So they're away off to New York City, and the Shed is now going to teach them. He's going to be a good person. He's going to be a teacher. And I hope we see him again, because I adore the Shed. He is such a unique character. And I feel like maybe they'll be back for the finale, because he honestly couldn't care less what's going on in Blue Valley. He just wanted his powers fixed, and now they are, but he's going to do some good with it. But basically on the way back to Blue Valley, you can see Pat is still a little broken by what happened in the Shadowlands. He's not his usual quirky self, and Courtney's talking about how they're going to save Blue Valley and they're going to find out who's behind the cameras. but Pat really couldn't care less at this point because I think he's kind of been broken by everything that happened in the Shadowlands. And the big, most exciting thing from the episode is Courtney was like, if Mr. Bones and the Helix Academy weren't watching us, who was? And it cut back to the room with all the cameras in it. As this was all happening, everyone in Blue Valley destroyed the cameras. There are no cameras left, so the person watching them can't see what's happening in Blue Valley anymore. And you saw the gloved hand get very angry. It zoomed up over the blazer, and we saw that this was actually a hooded figure. And when it seen that all of the cameras were gone, it punched a hole through the TV screens and walked off in a strut. So we don't know who it is. Me, with all my DC knowledge, knows nothing about who this character is.
Cindy.
We didn't see Cindy this week. But yeah, that's it. The Infinity Inc. saga is over now. I feel like this was designed. Mr. Bones also said maybe they were right in the end. Maybe these people deserve to be seen by the world. And because he had such a close-up interaction with the Justice Society of America, he was like, maybe it's time we start our own team. So I feel like Mr. Bones is going to use all the kids staying at the Helix Academy and form his own basically X-Men, where he has all these kids with superpowers. And then meanwhile, I think Jenny and Todd are going to form their own little Infinity Inc. kind of unit where they're being taught by the Shed. So, but of course, the big story is who is watching them in Blue Valley. It's not Mr. Bones. Who is and who killed the gambler? Because now we're none the wiser again. The big running theory, since Mr. Bones was the tagline from last season, he was the kind of tag at the end credits. Everyone was like, Mr. Bones is coming to season 3. Turns out Mr. Bones isn't as bad as people thought. So now we don't know. It wasn't Cindy. It wasn't the Crocs. It wasn't Dragon King. And now it wasn't Mr. Bones. Who is killing people in Blue Valley, who attacked Starman, and who is watching them? Well, was watching them. Before I wrap up, the teaser for next week shows that Courtney learned a lot during her trip to the Helix Academy and wants to tell Cameron the truth about everything. So she wants to tell him all about his father and that she is Stargirl and that his father was a villain. But I think I told you before that Rick, our man, does not like Cameron. The two of them have clashed before, and then Cameron used his ice powers to burst Rick's car tires. So the two of them do not like each other. And now Rick is like jacked up on full-time hourglass, which we think is going to create an addiction problem. The promo for next week shows that Rick starts destroying Cameron's house. So I assume that spoils it and that Cameron does find out about Stargirl and the JSA, but Rick's off doing his own thing, destroying the mansion. And the grandparents get in on the action, shooting their ice powers out next week as well. So I feel like this is kind of like the moment in the season we were all waiting for. Still no Cindy sighting yet, but as far as the Cameron saga goes, I think it's just about to kick off next week.
You're not gonna get to tell him. It's gonna come out and it's gonna be horrible, and I'm gonna feel so bad for Courtney.
The way that you describe this episode, though, it seems like the storytelling and the writing was very smart, and like there was some metaphors and symbolism going on, which is always my favorite kind of storytelling in genre. I know I love that in Buffy when it was like everything was a metaphor for like being a teenager's hell and Buffy has to literally fight monsters. But the way that you describe certain things, I was like, oh, I see what they're getting at. If you look a little deeper, it's not just people trying to deal with these things. It goes a little deeper, which I like.
I think that's where Stargirl thrives because everyone talks about how Courtney's a source of light. And we were literally talking about a storyline here that involved literal lightness and literal darkness. And it turned into a metaphor about how these people who have been shielded by the Helix Academy don't deserve to be hidden away in the dark. They need to be pulled out into the light to be embraced by the world. And it took someone like the almighty Stargirl to do that. I think the show traffics or like it thrives as far as like a emotional metaphor goes. And I think that's where its strongest suit is. A lot of these shows use that format on an episodic basis. Stargirl finds a way to drag it out over the whole season. And I think that's where the higher quality streaming quality television comes from. Because again, I keep saying this, it was a streaming show to begin with. And that was only for a 2-parter. I can't wait to see how those arcs play into the rest of the season. Because these last 2 episodes have been very much like a little island on their own. We're back to the main story now. We've 6 episodes left. maybe 7, 6, sorting out who killed the gambler, who's been watching everyone in Blue Valley. And again, we still don't know how Cameron or the Icicle Jr. powers play into the storyline at all. And then, of course, I assume Cindy will be back by the end of it. So there's a lot of like fighting, the light fighting darkness, but it's more than the literal power of the cosmic staff versus the power of the shadows. There's real like important like metaphorical meanings below that. And again, I just love Stargirl so much. I can't wait till next week. But more than that, it's at its best right now, and I just hope it keeps going and gets that 4th season it deserves.
Yes, renew Stargirl CW, and also potentially give them a spinoff with the Helix Academy.
I would love
that's what it sounds like.
The fans go nuts every time those characters pop up. We love Green Lantern's daughter, and I would love to see her more than the average like 2 to 3 episodes a season.
Make it happen.
Manifesting that.